and welcome to Pockenrop. In today's video, as trailed in the last couple, I'm going to be turning my attention back to the series ranking each of the tracks from each Paul McCartney solo release. It's 1989 and I have reached Flowers in the Dirt. This album was the first McCartney album that I purchased contemporaneous with its release. And it's not the first I've heard. I had listened to stuff like Venus and Mars and Band on the Run before Flowers in the Dirt came out, having become a McCartney fan through the All the Best compilation. But it's the first contemporaneous McCartney album for me. It was my 15th birthday. I received it on cassette, and it still holds a special place for me as a McCartney record. I do think it's a strong record. It's in my top 10 McCartney albums of all time. Released on the 5th of June 1989, I had to wait exactly 1 month before actually receiving the album. I was already familiar with the lead single that came from the album, which we will come to during the ranking. Before I go in, I remind you to like the video, hit the subscribe button, and click the bell to receive notifications of future content. And let's start with track number 12 of the 12-track album, and it's How Many People. This is the penultimate track of the record, and it's a bit of a low point of the album for me. It's reggae McCartney. You've heard in previous videos, if you've watched them, that I'm not that fond of when Paul goes reggae. I don't mind a bit of it in something like, say, Live and Let Die, but a full-on reggae song. I like the dedication to the murdered rainforest campaigner, but at its heart, whilst it's in the right place, it's a song I really don't like. It's the only song perhaps on the record that I would skip. How Many People at number 12. At number 11, a song that I want to like more than I do, and it's Don't Be Careless, Love. This is a co-write between McCartney and Costello, which should give it some weight and gravitas. However, Paul's vocal on this is just awful. And knowing as well that from the archive releases they had a track like Tommy's Coming Home or 20 Fine Fingers that could have been considered for the record instead of Don't Be Careless, Love, it's a disappointing misstep on the record. In fact, it's the first misstep on the record. Don't Be Careless, Love, there's a better demo version done with Costello out there, but it's not great. At number 10, I have placed the album closer, Motor of Love, and I have blown hot and cold on this track over the years, for over 30 years. The structure and lyrics aren't bad. The melody's quite nice. The middle section, when I was down and counted out, is actually great. And it's that alone that puts it in 10th position and not right down maybe 11th or 12th. It's just generally a little bit too synthy and slow. I'm in the lukewarm camp still with this song. I like it when it's on, but I'm then reminded that it just doesn't sound quite right. It sounds a little bit too much of its time, maybe. One of the interesting things about listening to a podcast called Take It Away, where they do everything McCartney has released, is with a podcast you can listen to things back at a slightly higher speed. And when this is on 1.2 speed, Motor of Love actually shines. So I think it's also just a bit too slow. Motor of Love at number 10. And at number 9, the second track from side 1 of the record, Rough Ride. From here on in, I'm enjoying everything that's on the record on this list. And as I've said before, I don't really like Paul Does Reggae, but Rough Ride is one that I do like. I like the live version from Tripping the Live Fantastic. It's by no means perfect, but it evokes a feeling of summer. It takes me back to July 89 when I remember first hearing it. I really like Rough Ride. At number 8, I've placed You Want Her Too. So as a 15-year-old, I was blown away by this track. It was my introduction to Elvis Costello, because he sings the second vocal line on it. And that counterpoint, I know it's been picked over many, many times, that this is almost John-esque like the it's getting better all the time, couldn't get much worse. That counter voice really works. And when you actually take it as being perhaps two voices inside the same head, You Want Her Too is actually a really quite well-structured song. It is the genesis of what became a lifelong lover of Elvis Costello. It was a long journey before I actually learnt to like and love Costello's music in the first place, but it started here. So I was blown away at 15. Nowadays, there's something about the track that's just a little bit off that I can't quite articulate. That said, if you take it in the collection of full-on duets from McCartney's career, it kicks the butt out of The Girl Is Mine. And actually, I much prefer it to The Man or Say, Say, Say from Pipes of Peace, or What's That You're Doing from Tug of War. It's probably one of the better McCartney proper duets that we get throughout his career. You Want Her To at number 8. And now we hit the songs that I think really are what make the album so high in my affections. At number 7, Figure of 8. There's a better version out there, which is the single version. So this version that's on here does not contain the full band that would eventually be his live touring band from 89 to 1991. The single version was re-recorded and I believe is slightly longer than the version that's on here, and it's a lot better. It's better as a band track than it is as an almost mostly just McCartney track. Overly echoey on the production on the record as well, but I enjoy Figure of 8. I think it's a good, solid side 2 opener. 6 on my list is We Got Married. I like We Got Married a lot. I've heard it being rubbished as almost Paul by the numbers, but it's not. The production polishes it up from that original demo, which you might have heard if you've been into McCartney bootlegs. It could have become a song that becomes mired in a swamp of what McCartney was getting blamed for, a lot of that sentimentality. But Dave Gilmour's solo, much like it is on Once Upon a Long Ago, and indeed on No More Lonely Nights, really lifts the ballad and the sentimentality out of the song, and I think We Got Married really shines. It's a fantastic live track as well. And I also respect the fact that it's a song that celebrates the hard work that has to go into a successful marriage. And Paul and Linda's marriage was a success. It was a rarity in celebrity. It's a really, really solid, great song, We Got Married. Number 5, back with Elvis Costello, co-writes for That Day Is Done from side 2, which is a really... It's a high point of what is actually the cliff that this album drops off after the 8th track. So track 9 is the aforementioned Don't Be Careless Love. Track 10 is this. Track 11 is How Many People, and track 12 is Motor of Love. That Day Is Done. When I was young, I didn't like it. However, time has been really kind to it, and it's a really strong song now. It kind of reminds me of the track Just a Closer Walk with Thee, which is used in the funeral scenes in the film Live and Let Die, which, of course, Paul most definitely has seen because he wrote the music for the hit song Live and Let Die. That Day Is Done at number 5. And number 4 is Distractions. Now, when I was 15, this track I found a slow annoyance. It dragged the album down for me. I didn't like it. And it's so funny how our opinions change and flex as we age. Within 5 years, I found myself really looking forward to when I hear this track, and now it's just a beautiful acoustic ballad with some really, really lovely guitar work in the guitar break in the middle. We've got an octave jump in Paul's voice between the verses and the final verse. And it's again catapults me back to being 15 in the summer of 89. Even though I didn't like it then, it reminds me of a warm, sunny environment. Distractions is a really beautiful song. And number 3 is the second single from the record. It's this one. Now, I remember identifying this as my favourite track on the first run-through of the record, the first track that was new to me anyway. And I told my friends, McCartney's next single is going to be this one. And within a fortnight, I was proven right. He was releasing this as a single. The bass and the drum kicking in halfway through the chorus is great. I have nicked that so many times in my kind of bass playing and indeed in the songs that I write. I think it gives a real lift and a kick. Probably it's one of the first bass performances that I actually personally learnt to sing and play over time. And I just adore the track with one proviso, and it's the second half of the choruses that talks about this swan, the pun play. This a god is riding on its back. That's the bit of the song that I find just that the reach too far. This would be perfect with just the first half of the chorus. And this gives me an opportunity to big up a version of this song that does exactly that. And that came out this year. If you've watched previous videos, you'll know that I am a Bucks Fizz fan. It's increasingly becoming unashamedly a Bucks Fizz fan through these videos. And 3/4 of Bucks Fizz are now known as The Fizz. They released a new album this year called Everything Under the Sun. The final track is a cover of this one. And it's a great pop version. I mean, pure bubblegumish pop version of this one. And they do not bother with the swan half of the verse. And it shows that it could have been a better song by being stripped back just that little bit. This one at number 3. And number 2 is the final single that was released. It's the closer for side 2 and one of Paul's most achingly beautiful tributes. It's Put It There. Utterly flawless Put It There. I've not got a bad thing to say about it. It never overstays its welcome. It's a great acoustic number. It's a beautiful tribute to his late father. And since my dad died last year, Put It There really starts to get me that little bit more emotionally than it used to. Put It There is one of Paul's perfect songs. And I'm delighted we have it. The perfect side 1 closer. Put It There at number 2. Which leaves the album opener and lead-off single, My Brave Face, as my number 1. This was the first McCartney single I ever bought. I adore My Brave Face. It is in my top 100 songs of all time. Again, another perfect song. And I've done a lot of these rankings so far, and there aren't many McCartney albums up to this point where you can say that there are at least 2 flawless songs on it. This is a co-write with Costello, and this is where that co-write really shines. I think it is the best song of the entire Costello-McCartney collaboration, and with Veronica coming a pretty close second. They were the 2 lead-off hits as well. They are the best 2 that I think they came up with. I love the vocal hard opening, and the band deliver an absolutely perfect performance throughout. I loved the video when I was 15. It's amongst his very best solo stuff, and I actually placed it as my favourite ever McCartney single of my McCartney singles ranking that I did about a year ago. What a track. I accept I might have a blind spot to its faults, but personally, I genuinely cannot see any faults in this track at all. My Brave Face is my number 1 from this record. So before I conclude, I need to address just one more track. So my version of this from 1989 was on cassette. And on the cassette and CD versions, there was an additional track. It's track 13 on the CD. It was a B-side to the album Figure of 8, which means it is actually available in that brand new 80 singles box that McCartney has produced. But it was track 7 on side 1 of the cassette. It's Où est le soleil? And simply put, I hate it. I love all of side 1. And then with this at the end, it really wrecked my experience of the album. I loathe Où est le soleil? As a bonus track, it would be fine. I wouldn't be upset to never hear Où est le soleil again. I love my vinyl version because it's not on it. And it doesn't therefore ruin my near impeccable side one. So I'm not going to bother re-ranking to put Où est le soleil because you can work out if it's counted as part of the original album, it's number 13 and by a country mile. So that concludes my ranking of the 12 tracks of Flowers in the Dirt and my tirade against the 13th track, Où est le soleil. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this album and maybe how you would have ranked the tracks. I'll be back in a week with another video, which is probably going to be the start of my review of the year 2022 in album format and the songs that I've been listening to that I've really enjoyed. I expect that's probably going to be a two-parter, the second part coming out on Christmas Eve. But until then, remember to like, subscribe and hit the bell. And thank you for watching.